6th of June 1944. Off the coast of northern France, an Allied invasion fleet dropped anchor as part of the most complex and ambitious invasion in military history. Following airborne landings during the night, Allied forces were to conduct landings on 5 beaches codenamed from west to east: Utah, Omaha, Gould, Juno, and Sword. When looking at the fleet which was assembled to support and conduct the D-Day landings, one question which may arise is where were the aircraft carriers? By 1944, the aircraft carrier had proven itself to be central to the modern fleet, and carriers were in the process of replacing battleships as being the central capital ship. Carriers had proven themselves in action in striking at enemy vessels and had proved their value in supporting amphibious landings off Madagascar and in the Pacific. At the time that it was launched, Operation Neptune, or D-Day as landings on the 6th of June 1944 have more commonly came to be known, was the largest seaborne invasion in history. The question may therefore be asked of why amongst the Allied fleet of Normandy, which consisted of 6 battleships, 2 monitors, 23 cruisers, and 101 destroyers, plus numerous other vessels such as frigates, corvettes, and landing craft, which combined totaled in excess of 6,000 vessels, there were no aircraft carriers. There were a number of good reasons behind why aircraft carriers were not deployed off the French coast with the invasion fleet. Operation Neptune, and Operation Overlord more generally, was unique among wartime operations in relying entirely upon land-based aircraft. In August 1945, the journal The Aeroplane would describe Britain as one vast aircraft carrier anchored off the northwest coast of Europe. During the course of the war, over 500 airfields were constructed at a cost of approximately £600 million, the equivalent of over £26 billion today. From airfields in southern England, fighter and fighter bombers could reach Normandy at the limit of the shorter-ranged fighters such as the Spitfire. While Normandy was ideal in this regard, the distance from Allied airfields was an important element in sustaining the deception campaign to make the Germans think that the landings would occur in the Pas-de-Calais. With the air supremacy enjoyed by the Allies, alongside their vast number of aircraft that they had available to them, the disadvantages of the somewhat distant bases was acceptable. It could be argued, however, that there was still a useful supplementary role for aircraft carriers which could have provided air support closer to the beachheads and urgent response and support over the fleet and beaches. Practical considerations meant that this was not considered. Any carriers operating off the Normandy coast would have had to have sailed west to launch their aircraft before reversing course to the east to regain their position. This would have seen the carriers and their escorts cut across the shipping sailing back and forth between Britain and the beachheads. The control of maritime traffic was already a headache that had to be dealt with specific channels being given to ships in order to reduce congestion and to ensure a smooth passage for ships into and out of the beachheads. To allow the carriers to sail west and then east again would have meant an additional requirement for minesweeping operations, a difficult enough task for the invasion fleet that was sent. Another reason was that all of the American aircraft carriers and escort carriers were deployed in the Pacific. In comparison to the US Navy, the Royal Navy had a small fleet of carriers for which there was high demand for their service. At the time, the Royal Navy had 8 aircraft carriers in service, 5 of which were designated fleet carriers, with over 30 escort carriers providing a supplementary role. Just because aircraft carriers were not deployed with the invasion fleet and operational off the Normandy beaches does not mean, however, that carriers were not operating in support of the landings. Of the British escort carriers, on D-Day 3 were to be found in the southwest approaches providing air cover to Allied naval forces that had been deployed in the western English Channel to counter any U-boats which might leave the Biscay ports and attempt to cause havoc amongst the invasion fleet. In addition to these, of the Royal Navy's fleet carriers, HMS Victorious and HMS Formidable were to be found operating with the Royal Navy's home fleet from the anchorage of Scapa Flow. While far north of the English Channel, the carriers were prepared to weigh anchor and operate with the other elements of the home fleet against any German surface units based in Norway which might seek to react to the invasion or to the subsequent build-up. This cover role is one which is easily overlooked but served a vital purpose in standing by to neutralise threats to the invasion fleet before they reached the invasion area. It may also be noted that aircraft of the Fleet Air Arm did play an active role in D-Day, operating from bases in southern Britain, serving in such roles as gunfire spotting and by conducting anti-submarine patrols.